Reality is not just a stage on which we perform. It is a mirror that reflects back the emotions, beliefs, and unresolved conflicts we carry within. What we resist internally does not simply disappear, it waits. It waits in the body as tension, in the mind as intrusive thought, and in our lives as repeating patterns that defy logic but feel strangely familiar. When we deny sadness, pretend fear doesn't exist, or suppress anger in the name of civility, we don't destroy those energies, we displace them. And like all displaced forces in nature, they return seeking equilibrium. Neuroscience has shown that unprocessed emotional experiences remain active in the limbic system, particularly in the amygdala and hippocampus, long after the event has passed. These brain centers are responsible for emotional memory, and when we do not process our experiences fully, the brain continues to respond as if the threat or loss is ongoing. This is not philosophy, it is neurobiology, and it explains why changing your surroundings may offer temporary relief, but the emotional frequency you carry continues to shape how reality responds to you. Many people at your stage in life know the feeling of doing everything right, raising families, serving communities, making sacrifices only to find that peace remains elusive. You may have switched homes, changed habits, retired from long careers, or even pursued spiritual practices, yet still find yourself grappling with loneliness, regret, or a subtle anxiety about time slipping away. These feelings are not failures of character. They are calls for integration. The nervous system, like nature, seeks balance. If we do not find a way to embrace and understand the aspects of ourselves we've hidden away, our disappointments, our unspoken grief, our quiet fears, they return, not to punish us, but to remind us of what still longs to be seen. This is not unlike the phenomenon of homeostasis in biology. Just as the body seeks balance in temperature, blood pressure, and sugar levels, so too does the psyche seek emotional coherence. Suppress one pole of your emotional experience, and you create inner conflict, which eventually expresses itself outwardly in relationships, health, and even in the way your environment treats you. It's tempting to seek only the light, to affirm only the positive, especially in a culture that has long taught us to keep smiling and stay strong. But this is a misunderstanding of strength. Real strength, as demonstrated in recent studies in positive psychology, comes not from suppression but from emotional agility, the ability to move through a wide range of emotions without being dominated by them. Psychologist Susan David from Harvard describes emotional agility as being able to face emotions with courage, curiosity, and compassion, which allows us to live not by denial, but by depth. Imagine standing before a mirror that does not just reflect your face, but your state of being. Your thoughts, your unspoken truths, your hidden desires all ripple outward into the world around you. If you carry bitterness from a past injustice, even silently, you may find yourself repeatedly encountering situations that trigger resentment. Not because the world is unfair, but because your internal frequency is still attuned to that unresolved vibration. Reality is not a moral judge. It is a vibrational field. Like a tuning fork, it responds to what is present within us, not what we wish were true. This is why ignoring discomfort never works for long. What you avoid emotionally doesn't vanish, it calcifies. And over time, unprocessed pain becomes disconnection. But this is also where transformation begins. The path forward is not in erasing what you feel, but in learning to listen differently. The next time you feel sadness arise, rather than suppressing it, pause and ask, what does this sadness want me to know? If anger stirs in you, don't silence it out of guilt. Instead, investigate it with curiosity. Where is this energy trying to direct me? These simple inner questions can rewire your brain. Studies in mindfulness-based cognitive therapy have shown that awareness-based emotional inquiry significantly reduces depression, anxiety, and even chronic pain in older adults. It's not just about feeling better, it's about shifting the frequency you emit, so that life stops feeling like a loop and starts becoming a dialogue. So if you find yourself in a season of life where certain memories keep resurfacing, or emotions you thought were long buried return with new intensity, see them not as signs of regression but as signals of readiness. You are not being haunted by your past, you are being invited to integrate it. And you do that not by running, but by meeting yourself fully, gently, and with the same wisdom you have offered others for decades. The world will begin to shift around you the moment you choose to stay present with what rises within. Begin here. Place a hand over your heart, take a slow breath, and whisper inwardly, "I am willing to see what I have not yet welcomed." That single gesture may carry more healing power than 1,000 resolutions. Everything in existence dances between opposites. Day becomes night, joy follows sorrow, and silence gives birth to sound. We live in a world of rhythm, not rigidity. This is the principle that ancient philosophers called the law of polarity, and modern science affirms it in nearly every domain, from the duality of wave and particle in quantum mechanics to the sympathetic and parasympathetic balance in our nervous system. At first glance, this idea may seem abstract or poetic, but it holds the key to unlocking emotional resilience, mental clarity, and even better physical health. If we understand that every state of being exists on a spectrum, then we also understand that we are never truly stuck. Emotions like anger and fear are not final destinations, but positions along a continuum that can be shifted, not by denial or suppression, but by presence and choice. Think of a thermostat. It doesn't declare cold as bad or hot as good. It simply adjusts based on awareness of the environment. Your inner world works much the same way. Neuroscience shows us that emotional states are not fixed traits but neurochemical processes shaped by our focus and interpretation. Functional MRI studies reveal that labeling an emotion saying, "This is fear," or "This is grief," activates the prefrontal cortex, the brain's center for reason and regulation, and reduces reactivity in the amygdala, which governs the fight or flight response. That means the moment we meet an emotion with awareness, we begin to change our relationship to it, and with time, its frequency begins to shift. Our cultural conditioning, however, has trained us to split our experience. We were told that to be good, we must be cheerful, that to be brave, we must not cry, that to succeed, we must never fail. These well-meaning beliefs, while intended to protect us, have created artificial separations within the self. But life, in its wisdom, does not operate in absolutes. Everything you consider opposite is in truth a different frequency of the same essence. Joy and sadness, for instance, are both expressions of deep emotional engagement with life. One expands the heart, the other reveals its depth. Neither is the enemy of the other, they are companions in the same journey. This isn't just spiritual metaphor. Studies in effective neuroscience by Dr. Richard Davidson have shown that people who suppress negative emotions in favor of constant positivity actually show lower immune function and higher stress hormone levels than those who allow a healthy range of feelings. In contrast, those who embrace emotional complexity, acknowledging both light and shadow, tend to have better memory, stronger relationships, and greater psychological flexibility, which becomes increasingly vital as we age. If you're over 65, you've lived through enough to know that extremes never hold for long. Elation fades, sorrow softens, and the pendulum always swings. But there is wisdom in learning not to swing with it. When you anchor yourself at the center, what I call the conscious midpoint, you begin to respond rather than react. You become the conductor of inner energy, not its captive. Imagine your emotions not as storms to be weathered but as weather patterns to be studied. A flash of anger may be nothing more than a signal that a boundary needs to be clarified. A wave of envy might indicate a hidden desire ready to be reclaimed. By treating each emotional polarity as a message rather than a mistake, you shift from judgment to curiosity. And curiosity opens the door to healing. Begin by observing your reactions over the course of a single day. When something irritates you, pause and breathe. Ask yourself, what is this really about? When something delights you, stay present with it. Let it land fully. Emotional maturity lies in honoring both sides without being swept away by either. You do not need to label some emotions as wrong and others as right. You need only to remember that each one carries part of the whole. And wholeness, not perfection, is the goal. If you find yourself feeling lost in sadness, you are not broken, you are connected to life's depth. If anger arises, you are not cruel, you are sensing something that matters deeply to you. These are not flaws to fix, but signs to interpret. In the same way a skilled gardener reads the health of the soil to guide their care, You can read the signals of your emotional world to guide your healing. With practice, this becomes second nature. You begin to trust your ability to move between states consciously. You become less afraid of strong feelings, because you know where you stand in the middle of them. You become, in essence, the thermostat, not the temperature. That shift, subtle but powerful, is the heart of transformation. So here is your invitation. For the next 3 days, notice when an emotion pulls you to an extreme. Don't resist it. Instead, pause, name it and ask, what is this trying to show me? Write it down if it helps. These simple moments of reflection are the beginnings of emotional alchemy. You are not here to chase one extreme or avoid another. You are here to learn how to stand at the center and see both clearly. That is where power lives. That is where peace begins. And that is where you discover that your emotions are not your enemies. They are your instruments waiting to be tuned. There comes a moment in life when we no longer wish to be pushed and pulled by extremes, when the noise of either-or thinking grows exhausting, and something deeper within us longs for stillness, not the stillness of inaction, but the quiet power of knowing where we truly stand. This is the moment we begin to understand the center not as a place of neutrality or indifference, but as the most powerful position we can inhabit. Just as the eye of a storm holds calm while the winds rage around it, the conscious center within us offers clarity even in the midst of emotional chaos. In physics, balance is not the absence of motion, but the presence of equal and opposing forces in harmony. The same is true of our inner world. Emotional and spiritual balance is not achieved by erasing extremes, but by holding them with awareness and choosing from the center. Research from Stanford University has shown that individuals with higher interoceptive awareness, the ability to sense internal states, have greater emotional regulation and resilience. This capacity isn't mystical. It's biological, and it can be cultivated. When we bring attention inward, when we sense our heartbeat during a moment of tension or notice the breath during grief, we begin to shift from being a reactor to becoming a responder. We move from survival to wisdom. Many of us have spent decades being told to pick a side. Be strong or be soft, be assertive or be kind, be realistic or be hopeful. But these are false choices. You can be all of these things if you know how to live from the center. This is what the great traditions pointed to when they spoke of the middle path or the golden mean. Aristotle believed that virtue lies between excess and deficiency, and modern psychology echoes this through the concept of dialectical thinking, the ability to hold two seemingly opposing truths at once. For example, you can feel disappointed and still be grateful. You can be afraid and still act courageously. This flexibility of thought, known as cognitive complexity, has been shown to correlate with better decision-making, lower levels of anxiety, and increased life satisfaction, particularly in older adults. When we anchor ourselves in the center, we are not abandoning emotion, but accessing choice. And choice, in its deepest form, is freedom. Think of the center as the axis on which your entire experience rotates. The more stable the axis, the more gracefully you can turn through life's seasons. If your identity rests on being only the helper or the strong one, then any moment of need or weakness threatens that image. But if you live from the center, you are no longer defined by roles or masks. You become the space in which strength and vulnerability coexist. You can listen without needing to fix, feel without needing to flee, speak without needing to shout. The philosopher Heraclitus once said, "The way up and the way down are one and the same." What he meant is that opposites are part of a shared movement, and wisdom lies in knowing how to move within that flow without losing your ground. Neuroscientific studies on mindfulness support this view, showing that individuals who practice present-moment awareness activate areas of the brain associated with self-regulation, empathy, and insight, such as the anterior cingulate cortex and the insula. In simple terms, when we are centered, our brain is better wired for reflection over reaction. Now, let's translate this into daily life. The next time someone's words trigger a surge of anger, instead of responding immediately, try placing your attention in the middle of your chest. Feel your breath. Notice the heat in your body without trying to push it away. This pause creates a neurological shift. It engages the vagus nerve, part of your parasympathetic nervous system, which promotes calm and connection. From this space, ask yourself not, How do I win this argument? But what energy do I want to bring into this space? In that question lies your power. When we operate from our center, we no longer react from pain, but respond from presence. And presence is what transforms not just our mood, but the entire quality of our relationships and environments. So here is your invitation. Begin each morning by placing one hand on your heart and the other on your belly. Take 3 slow breaths and ask yourself, where is my center today? Do this not as a ritual of routine, but as a daily act of remembering. Remember that you are not defined by your past, not trapped by your feelings, and not obligated to swing between extremes. You are the one who can stand in the still point, listen to both sides, and respond with wisdom. You are not just part of the world's rhythm, you are its conductor. And the world will begin to shift, not because it changed, but because you returned to your place of power within it. If you have ever felt that your emotions are too much or that certain feelings should be buried, silenced, or ignored, I invite you now to consider a different truth. Every emotion you experience is not a problem to be fixed, but a message to be heard. Anger, sadness, envy, fear, these are not flaws in your character, but carriers of hidden wisdom. Just as a physical symptom often points to an underlying imbalance in the body, emotional discomfort signals something beneath the surface asking for your attention. Neuroscience supports this with growing clarity. Dr. Antonio Damasio's groundbreaking work has shown that emotions are deeply intertwined with decision-making and self-awareness, operating through a network of brain regions that help us interpret, learn from, and respond to experience. When we suppress an emotion, we interrupt that learning process. The energy doesn't vanish. Instead, it lodges in the nervous system, leading to chronic stress responses, weakened immunity, or low-grade emotional fatigue that becomes harder to explain but easy to feel. And this is why understanding our emotions as dual in nature, as carrying both a shadow and a hidden gift, can be profoundly liberating. Take anger, for instance. Most of us were taught to avoid it, to hide it, to push it down in the name of being polite or spiritual. But from both a psychological and biological standpoint, anger is not inherently destructive. It is energy. It is motion. In its rawest form, anger is your system saying, something matters deeply, and it is being violated. In evolutionary terms, anger served as a boundary-setting force, a protective mechanism to help ensure survival. But when left without direction, this fire turns inward, often transforming into bitterness or guilt. The same is true of sadness. It is not a weakness. It is a depth of emotional presence, a softening of the heart that often points to love, loss, or longing. In cultures where grief is expressed communally, such as certain indigenous tribes or traditional Jewish mourning practices, there is far less chronic depression because the energy of sadness is allowed to move. When energy moves, it heals. When it stagnates, it festers. The body is our first witness to this truth. According to the CDC and numerous longitudinal studies, older adults who engage in emotionally expressive practices such as journaling, talk therapy, or meditation report significantly lower levels of inflammation and cortisol, the stress hormone most associated with long-term health decline. These practices do not eliminate pain. They create a safe passage for pain to transform. Emotional alchemy begins when we stop asking, how do I get rid of this feeling? And instead ask, what is this feeling trying to reveal? Imagine if, instead of fighting anxiety, you approached it like a traveler knocking at your door. What would it say if you invited it to speak? Often, anxiety is ungrounded expansion, the mind leaping forward without the body. It asks for anchoring, not suppression. Envy, too, can be reinterpreted. Instead of a sign of pettiness, what if envy is the soul's way of pointing toward a desire we've not yet allowed ourselves to claim? If we shift our perception, these emotions stop being obstacles and start becoming teachers. The practical path forward is to cultivate what I call emotional decoding. It is a simple but profound daily practice. Begin each day by sitting quietly for 5 minutes. Place one hand on your chest, another on your abdomen, and simply ask, what emotion is most present in me today? Don't analyze it. Just feel. Then ask, what might this emotion be asking me to see, to understand, or to change? Write down whatever comes. Over time, this builds a fluency with your inner world that makes you more attuned, more grounded, and more free. Clinical psychology calls this emotional granularity. The ability to distinguish and articulate subtle emotional states in research shows it leads to more effective coping, reduced impulsivity, and stronger mental health outcomes, especially in older adults navigating life transitions. I want to remind you that there is no timeline for healing and no emotion that disqualifies you from peace. You may be carrying feelings that go back decades, resentments never voiced, griefs unacknowledged, fears inherited from a different time. These do not make you broken. They make you human. And more importantly, they make you ready. Ready to listen, to welcome, to transmute. Not through force, but through the gentle, persistent act of attention. Just as a seed breaks through soil in its own time when conditions are right, your unprocessed emotions begin to release when they are no longer met with resistance, but with compassion. So the next time you feel something heavy rise within, pause, breathe, place a hand over your heart and say, I see you. I am listening. That one act may be the beginning of a freedom you did not know was possible. Because when you stop trying to eliminate what you feel and instead learn to understand it, you reclaim the energy trapped inside it. And that energy, once freed, does not return as pain, it returns as wisdom. There is a profound shift that occurs when we stop living at the mercy of our emotions and begin to move through them with conscious intention. This shift does not require perfection or even mastery. It begins with presence. And presence, as both ancient wisdom and modern science now affirm, is not passive observation but active participation in how we respond, choose, and direct our internal state. The human nervous system, particularly the vagus nerve, is designed to scan for safety and resonance. When we are present, breathing consciously, aware of our body and feelings, we activate the system's parasympathetic branch, which tells the heart it is safe to slow down, tells the immune system it can focus on healing, and tells the mind that clarity can return. This is not esoteric theory. Research from the University of North Carolina has shown that heart rate variability, a marker of vagal tone, improves dramatically when individuals practice even 10 minutes a day of mindful awareness. The body listens to the mind, and the mind listens to the quality of attention we bring to each moment. When we learn to meet our experience with full presence, we change the very vibration we emit. And reality, like a finely tuned echo chamber, reflects it back. To live from this place is to step into a new kind of agency, not the agency of force or willpower, but the agency of frequency. If your thoughts are scattered and fearful, and your body tense with anticipation, then no matter how calm your words may sound, what the world responds to is your underlying signal. This is why positive thinking alone often fails. It is not what we say that shifts reality, but what we truly sustain. Emotional congruence is the key. Studies in psychophysiology have found that when there is coherence between heart rhythms and brainwaves achieved through intentional breathing and focused feeling states like gratitude or compassion, the body enters what researchers call a state of psychophysiological coherence. In this state, decision-making sharpens, stress hormones drop, and even inflammatory markers decrease. And perhaps most importantly, the energy we carry becomes naturally magnetic to peace, connection, and resolution. This coherence is not about suppressing hard emotions. It is about acknowledging them, integrating them, and choosing which vibration you want to remain aligned with. Think of yourself as a radio tower. At every moment, you are broadcasting a signal not just with your words, but with your presence, your attention, your emotional tone. When you are grounded in your center, that signal becomes stable, consistent, and trustworthy. Others feel it. You feel it. Life begins to respond differently because the frequency has changed. This is the secret behind ancient spiritual disciplines and the reason why sages and mystics seem to walk through the world with calm, while others around them panicked. They were not immune to emotion. They had simply learned not to be ruled by it. And this capacity is not reserved for monks in monasteries. It is available to you now at any stage of life. Especially now, when you have the wisdom of decades, the depth of memory, and the clarity of hindsight. If the early years of life were about building and doing, this chapter is about refining and becoming. And becoming does not require speed. It requires stillness. From stillness comes awareness, and from awareness, conscious choice. So here is a practice that can root this truth into your daily life. Begin and end your day by asking a single question. What frequency am I choosing to hold right now? Write down your answer. No judgment, just observation. You may find that some mornings you are carrying grief. Other days, a quiet joy. The goal is not to chase the good and reject the bad. It is to become the one who notices and then decides. If you notice anxiety, ask yourself, what would steadiness feel like in my breath right now? If you notice irritation, try moving your body gently, maybe a slow walk or even simple stretches, allowing energy to move. These actions might seem small, but over time they recalibrate your nervous system and rewrite the patterns that have shaped your emotional responses. Neuroscience confirms that neuroplasticity, the brain's ability to rewire itself, continues well into late adulthood. You are never too old to create new pathways. In fact, the brain of a reflective elder, one who engages in regular self-inquiry and emotional awareness, is often more balanced and integrated than that of a distracted younger adult. You are not a product of your past emotions. You are the conductor of present vibration. And that vibration determines the shape of your next moment. By living as the axis, not pulled by the swing of every external stimulus but grounded in your chosen state, you become the author of a new chapter in your life. A chapter not dictated by fear or reactivity, but by quiet wisdom and deliberate presence. So the next time something stirs you, pause, breathe, ask, what energy do I want to anchor here? Let that question be your compass. Because at the end of it all, it is not what we felt that defines us. It is what we did with what we felt. And when you choose to meet your emotions not as threats, but as teachers, you become not just a witness of life, but a creator of it.